You're standing in front of your boss's desk, the one you've stared at for years. You slide a single white envelope across the polished surface. He looks up, confused, then stunned. As you turn and walk out of that office for the last time, one thought cuts through the silence. 5 years ago, none of this seemed possible. 5 years ago, you were stuck in a soul-crushing 9 to 5. You watched the clock, lived for the weekends, and felt a quiet desperation growing. You needed a change, a side hustle that could one day set you free. Your work friend Mark noticed. He'd try to cheer you up, talk about office gossip, but you were already worlds away, scrolling through articles on passive income. That's when you stumbled into the world of vending machines. It wasn't glamorous, but the numbers made sense. You didn't have much. You found an old, beat-up machine on Craigslist for $600 and hauled it home in your equally beat-up truck. It was a monster that sat in your garage for a month. Mark came over once, saw you scrubbing years of grime off it, and just shook his head with a smile, certain you'd lost your mind. After fixing a busted coin mechanism, you finally secured your first location, a local community center. They were hesitant, but you were persistent. You'll never forget collecting the first week's earnings. It was only $75, but it felt real. This could actually work. For the next year, you reinvested everything. Every dollar went into buying another machine. You'd work your day job, then spend nights and weekends hauling machines, stocking snacks, and counting coins. It was a grueling schedule. You focused on niche spots the big companies ignored. Warehouses with late shifts, 24-hour gyms, auto repair shops. Slowly, you built a small route of about 15 machines. You weren't getting rich, but it was working. And that's when you first popped up on his radar. His name was on stickers slapped onto what felt like every other machine in the city. He was the established guy, the old guard. You figured there was enough business for everyone. You were wrong. The first sign of trouble came when you landed a spot in a large office building, your biggest location yet. When you went to install your machine, you saw his, right next to the spot they'd saved for you. A week later, the property manager called. Your competitor had been warning him about you, saying new operators are unreliable and that you'd probably be out of business in 6 months. It was classic bad-mouthing. Luckily, you'd already built a good relationship with the manager, who saw it as a desperate move to protect his turf. But it was a clear message. This wasn't friendly competition. You were a threat. The professional courtesy you see in most industries? Gone. You'd cross paths sometimes, restocking in the same building. He wouldn't even make eye contact. He'd just glance at your refurbished machine, then at your old truck, and you could almost hear him thinking you were just some small-timer in way over your head. The bad-mouthing was just the beginning. Things got ugly, fast. You started getting service calls for machines that were working perfectly the day before. You'd show up to find your machine unplugged. Annoying, but survivable. Then came the physical sabotage. You got a call from a factory, one of your best spots. The machine was dead. You opened it up and saw the main power cable to the credit card reader had been cleanly snipped. It was deliberate. You couldn't prove it, but you knew who was responsible. You missed plans with Mark that night to drive out and fix it. He called, wondering where you were, and you knew he couldn't understand that this wasn't just a hobby anymore. This was a second, all-consuming job. The final straw was the false complaint. You received a certified letter from the city health department. A complaint had been filed against one of your machines for dispensing expired products. An inspector was scheduled to visit your entire route. This was a kill shot. One major violation could get your license suspended. You spent the next 3 days in a complete panic, triple-checking every single machine. Everything was perfect, of course, because you were obsessive about your business. But you realized you were just reacting to his attacks. He was setting the pace, and you knew if you didn't do something drastic, he would bleed you out, one cut wire and one false complaint at a time. Lying awake after that health department scare, something inside you snapped. The fear turned into cold, calculated resolve. He thought you were a small-timer. That unspoken insult you saw in his eyes, that was his biggest mistake. He saw your old truck and refurbished machines, but he didn't see the steady income you had meticulously built, nor the thousands you had quietly saved. In his arrogance, he showed you his greatest weakness. He was running an old-school, cash-only business, stuck in the 1990s. In that moment, you saw your path. You weren't going to fight him in the mud anymore. You were going to make him obsolete. You made a quiet decision that night. You went all in. You drained your business savings account and got financing for new equipment. It was a huge, silent gamble that would either launch you forward or bankrupt you. You weren't just buying a few new machines. You were buying an arsenal of the latest vending technology. Bright, new machines with guaranteed vend sensors, and most importantly, full, cashless payment systems. The data was clear. Cashless could boost sales by up to 40%. Your rival was leaving a huge amount of money on the table. You weren't going to compete on price. You were going to compete on experience and superior service. Armed with a line of credit and your old truck full of new machines, you went on offense. Your first stop was the office building where he first badmouthed you. You didn't mention your rival. You just laid out the new reality. Your current machine is cash only, you told the manager. In a building full of professionals, how many people carry cash? I can place this new machine here. It takes credit cards and Apple Pay. It also tells me when it's running low, so your employees will never see an empty slot. Then you made the offer, a 20% commission on total revenue, far above the typical rate, made possible by the higher sales. He was sold. The old machine was out by the end of the day. You repeated this across the city. You went to the factory where he cut your wires, to every location you knew was his. The pitch was always the same. Your current vendor is using old tech. You're losing out on sales. I have a better solution. One by one, they switched. His own tactics made your job easier. Location owners were already annoyed with his aging equipment. You just had to show up with a better offer. Soon, you started getting calls from his other locations. Word was spreading. Within 6 months, your route more than tripled. You had to hire a part-time employee just to keep up, but you were still driving that same old truck. Today, your operation is unrecognizable from the inside. You run a route of over 100 high-performance machines, all clustered in dense zones to maximize efficiency. The income provides a quiet fortune nobody can see. The other day, you pulled up to a fancy restaurant in your old, dusty truck to meet Mark for his promotion dinner. The valet looked at your truck, then at you, and directed you to park it yourself around the back. You just smiled. Over dinner, Mark talked about his new title, the office politics, the next rung on the corporate ladder. You listened, but you realized you now inhabit a different world. The friendship is still there, but it's changed. It's one of the quiet costs of buying your freedom. You haven't seen one of your rival's stickers in over a year. The last you heard, his business was liquidated. You even bought a few of his old machines at auction, just for the spare parts. A final, silent transaction. His attempts to sabotage you were the unintentional catalyst that forced you to innovate, to get smarter, and build a more resilient business. While he was busy playing dirty, you were busy building something he couldn't possibly compete with. The best response wasn't revenge. It was making him irrelevant. And that freedom allowed you to finally walk back into that old office, slide that white envelope across the desk, and say the 2 words you worked so hard for. I quit. The real victory wasn't taking his business. It was taking back your own life. Not every quiet fortune starts with a vending machine. Consider subscribing to us for more stories and inspiration.